Now, nice. Now I'm gonna remove my notifications because I learned that the hard way. And let's get started. All right, so I'm sharing my whole screen. I'm not supposed to do that, but I'm gonna do it. So what I want to talk about today is there is this that I made called Plug and Play, which is a plugin system for reusable code in Node.js. At some point, this said component, but this was very confusing about web components. And this is not necessarily for the web. This can be anything. So basically, my need was for the project that I am. We needed to do something that we call BFF, which is a backend for a front end, which is basically for our decoupled architecture in Node. We have like very complex interactions and things that will give you content based on the user data that users send us, like I watched this video or I liked this other thing. So based on that, then other API calls are made, and then the final result is cobbled together. While it was possible to do it with the current tools, it was like a little too much to ask to each consumer to implement all that logic. So the idea is that we would have like a facade that would take care of everything. Then we quickly realized, okay, but each consumer may want to somehow alter and modify that facade and how that works. And that's when I tried to research for a plugin system, and I didn't find much in the open source community, and I probably was wrapped up into the idea of developing mine and didn't search properly. But as I say, I did some minor research and couldn't find what I needed. So I made this. So this is basically what this does. So if you're familiar with the plugin concept in Drupal 8, if not, ask Joe. He knows all about it. This is it follows kind of the same idea. It was inspired by it, but it's a hard simplification for our use case. But you create a plugin manager, and the manager is in charge of the discovery of the plugins, and we will go into what a plugin is in a moment, and also into creating an instance of the plugin. So so uses of this are like I try to provide a couple of examples here on why you would use plugins and how you can make use of them in your day-to-day Node.js work, like we do here at Lullabot. And one of the examples that I'm giving is that if your application deals with user objects, they could be initialized by different methods, and you may not even know the method in advance statically at compile time. You may not know, oh, this user is going to be imported from GitHub or about me data, etc. So the idea is that you provide plugins for each one of those, and the plugin would be like maybe a JavaScript class or a function that knows how to build the user object. And it does it by calling the GitHub API or about me or whatever. So at runtime, depending on what the actual person using your application selected, you instantiate one plugin or the other, and they have the same shape, both the GitHub and the about me, and they are used in the same way. You call the same methods. They all have the same methods available, and they are all used in with passing the same arguments and return the same thing. So basically, you replace one with the other. If you have opportunities of things that are the same but can have different business logic, I think that you can benefit from this plugin system. So a plugin is just okay. Let me go here into I think it's the docs. No, actually, let me scroll down a little bit. Yeah. So a plugin is just a folder that contains a plug and play YAML file, and the contents of that is the ID of the plugin. This key represents the thing that you're going to load the plugin by. And then a name and description. This is not used anywhere right now, but it may, like someone could write a client command line interface to list all the plugins that are available for a certain type. And getting ahead of myself with typed plugins, but you can define types by saying, okay, I'm gonna say that all the plugins of this shape are plugins of the type fruit, and then all fruits, expose the level of sugar that they have, if they are round or not, if they are good, or they're like beet, and things like that. So so a command line interface could read the plugins and say, provide some human readable. And then there is loader, and this is actually important because this is the JavaScript file that you see in here that is going to actually return that object that says if the fruit is sweet or not. So so yeah, basically the loader just returns something, whatever your plugin is. In this example, it returns a function. Console.log is a function, and it returns it with the key logger. So when you instantiate plugin 1, it's going to return an object with the key logger, and you can just pass a string, and it's going to log to the console. And I tried this, and it works. So I know that Winston already provides this for Node.js. Winston is logging module, which is really cool if you haven't tried it. But this is just an example. So you could have different plugins that return the key logger with a function, and you could have different functions that send your message to Splunk, or send your message to another log service, etc. So yeah, basically the only thing that you care about is the logger, and the loader here is going to provide the business logic. So so yeah, discoverability based on the presence of a file, and then the return object from the export function. So that's what the plugin system is. There are two other uses of plugins that you may care, and that is typed plugins. And that is what I explained before. A typed plugin type is also a plugin, but instead of defining the export function, you export the defined properties. So this is what is going to mandate what plugins of type fruit, the properties that they need to return. So in this case, we are only returning logger, but if we were to write a plugin of type fruit, we would need to return these 3 keys. And that is important, otherwise there will be a big error in your console. That is done because you need to set expectations. So you need to know that a fruit is going to have the keys that you expect. And JavaScript is not the best language to provide those. So we enforce this via the plugin type. So to define the properties, that's basically what you do right now. You cannot enforce that isBerry actually has a Boolean inside, and size has one of the three values: medium, big, and small. But it's something, I think. This may get implemented later on. There are two projects that I'm looking at. One is called tcomb, and the other one is Flow Runtime. And given that this project, Plug and Play, already uses Flow, I think that Flow Runtime kind of makes sense. And how you implement the types plugin is you just provide the ID of the plugin that defines the type. So to define a type, again, you just create a normal plugin, basically a Plug and Play YAML, and then a loader. You can call the loader whatever, but the default is loader.js. And the plugin type needs to extend from plugin type loader base. So this is the only requirement. Plugin types can have types as well, which is kind of a little bit of inception. Finally, one of the things that I like the most is decorated plugins. And this is very nice because it is what it allows us in the project that I was mentioning before to provide the way of consumers or client applications to give us, I want my response in this particular shape. But they may be an Android app, and that's not based on Node.js. We cannot require them to do Node.js. So with decorated plugins, we can just have a plugin that inherits everything from another plugin, and it basically decorates that plugin. And then you override YAML values. So I'm gonna click here. This brings it to the tests folder. But this is the idea. There is this avocado plugin here. I'm going to show the avocado plugin. It has a dependency on Mango, because obviously you will not have an avocado without having a mango first. And it basically just defines some custom properties. Says that the sugar level is low, and it has a loader and everything. And the ripe avocado just inherits everything, and you can see the total absence of the loader JavaScript file because it's going to use the other one. And it overrides the sugar level to medium. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to use whatever the avocado plugin loads, and the avocado plugin uses the YAML file. And if it's just an avocado, it's going to say low, but if it's a ripe avocado, it's going to say medium. And that's what I think it's interesting, because you can provide functionality and extend functionality without having to do any JavaScript programming, just by you set up, or in our case, we set up the base plugin, and we have other people that may not know about Node.js to just override some YAML keys. And this is supposedly easy to use, or I hope it is. So I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna do npm install save plug and play, and it's going to download all the dependencies, etc. Maybe we will not have time to show this. But what I wanted to show is that you can actually have third-party plugins without you having to do any work. Okay. Yeah, I need to do npm init. Yeah, this is going to take a little bit more time than I expected. But the idea is that in here, you may see that the options down below for the plugin manager talk about the discovery and if allowed contributed plugins. That means that you can, since you don't need to register your plugins, your manager is going to find them. I remember at the beginning here, we didn't register any plugins. We didn't do any require. So you don't need to know in advance what plugins are available to you. So you can have in your node modules directory projects that provide plugins. Maybe because they are, maybe Splunk knows that there is a project that uses plugin for logging, right? Maybe they provide their Splunk SDK, and also they provide a plugin. And if you're using plug and play, you will be able to discover that. And that's the idea. In our project, how we're using that is that we don't give them access, we don't give consumers access to change the code in our code base to provide their YAML files. They create their project, and we import that project using npm, and that's pretty much everything that we have to do. We don't need to even do a require and add that to an array of possible plugins. It gets discovered over time. And yeah, I think that the demo would have been cool. To address a question that's going to come up, since the node modules can get pretty intense, gets real down there, you can select the path where you look for plugins, and that kind of improves performance. And that's pretty much it. Ta-da! I'm going to switch back to where's everyone? Okay, here. Well, I'll stop my screen sharing. Are there any questions? Did I go too fast through all that? I know you're speaking, but you're muted.
So what's the current use case that you're using it for now?
So basically, we are exposing a GraphQL endpoint for customers. And while that is cool, there is the need of having persistent queries, because GraphQL works with post requests, and those are hard to cache, and they can get, you can make it work with a GET request, but there is a limit to the size of the URL, so that is not really a great solution. So basically what we use it for is that we allow each consumer to implement a plugin that just contains a GraphQL query. So it's just a flat TXT file that contains the query. So we can, know that when someone goes to the URL slash Android slash blah blah blah, we select the GraphQL query that the Android team gave us, execute it, and then return it back. So if there is no plugin, we fall back to default plugin. So that's pretty much the use case that we're using. So yeah, this was one of the few ways we could think that teams that don't have JavaScript in their stack at all could integrate with the backend, which is what we wanted to. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yeah, like generally. It sounds complicated. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's fair. I do that. I make simple things sound complicated because I go too much into the details. But in the end, it really is only a matter of creating a YAML file. That ripe avocado use case, that's how you're probably going to use it all the time. But someone has to implement the base plugin, and that's when you need to use the loader, and the loader just does all the magic that it needs to do in order to return an object with the necessary keys.
Cool. That sounds neat.
I'm gonna say it like that next time. Sounds easier. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording.